People had only minutes to grab their things and run. We are looking at wildfires that are breaking records right now. A state of emergency has been declared in both Washington and Oregon, and most people watching the news have no idea how bad this actually is. This isn't a normal bad fire season. This is shaping up to be one of the worst stretches either state has ever recorded, and it's only the first week of August. Peak fire season for this part of the country usually runs through September, which means what you're about to hear is not the end of the story. It's closer to the middle. Stick with me here because I'm going to walk you through every major fire burning right now, what has changed just overnight, and one development in particular that I think almost nobody's talking about yet, even though it should be front page news. Let's start in Tonasket, because the Sinlahekin fire there is now one of the biggest fires burning in the entire country. And I mean that literally, not as an exaggeration for the camera. As of this morning, it has burned past 102,900 acres, and it is only 5% contained. That means crews have barely started to lock down the edges of this fire, 9 days in, and they are still fighting for basic control, not victory. Level 3 evacuations, meaning leave right now, don't wait, don't pack slowly, are in place west of the Okanogan River all the way to Anna Mountain. That covers Ellisford, Pine Creek, and the Palmer Mountain area. More than 1,000 personnel are assigned to this single fire right now, and the suppression cost has already climbed past $9 million, and that number only goes up the longer this burns. Now let's talk about Lake Chelan, one of the most beautiful places in Washington state. A spot people travel from all over the country to visit every single summer. The fire burning there is called the Little Giant Fire. The name sounds almost gentle, but this fire has already burned close to 59,300 acres, and it sits at 0% contained. On the South Lakeshore side, from Pyramid Creek to 25 Mile Creek, people are under level 3 orders, meaning get out now. Below that, along other parts of the shoreline, people are under level 2 and level 1, meaning be ready to leave at any moment, keep your car packed, keep the gas tank full, and keep your phone charged. Over in Spokane, the fires are smaller in size, but they hit a city, not just open land, and that changes everything about how much attention they get. The Old Trails fire has burned about 3,700 acres. The Autumn Lane fire is close behind at roughly 5,900 acres. The Fairview fire is smaller at just over 1,000 acres. All three are still sitting at 0% containment, though officials say the fire activity has calmed down a little compared to the weekend, when things were genuinely chaotic. The wind is still the thing everyone is worried about, because in a city, wind-driven fire doesn't just burn brush. It jumps from roof to roof, fence to fence, and it moves through neighborhoods far faster than most people expect. Now look south to Oregon. Oregon is dealing with something even bigger than Washington right now, and almost nobody outside the region is talking about it. There are more than 60 large fires burning across the state. Close to 2 million acres have burned already, and more than 25,000 people are living under some kind of evacuation order. Compare that to Spokane, where about 60,000 people were told to evacuate. But Spokane is a real city, the second biggest in Washington. In Oregon, this is happening across huge stretches of ranch land, high desert, and forest, so the story doesn't look as dramatic on camera, even though the danger to the people who actually live there is just as real, maybe even worse, because the resources spread thinner across a bigger area. Zoom out even further for a second. Across the entire country this year, tens of thousands of wildfires have already burned through more than 5 million acres, and that puts 2026 on track to be one of the highest totals recorded in the last couple decades, trailing only a small handful of years. Oregon alone is responsible for something close to a third of all that acreage. One state, nearly a third of the entire country's burned land. Sit with that for a second. That's the overall picture. Now let's get into what has actually changed in just the last day, because there's a lot moving fast, and some of it changes the whole story. Let's stay in Spokane first, since that's the fire most people already know about. The three fires there, Fairview, Old Trails, and Autumn Lane, are now being managed as one single incident by fire crews. The Fairview fire has stopped moving forward, which is good news, but it does not mean the fire is out. It just means it isn't spreading right now. The Old Trails fire grew a little overnight and is now around 3,700 acres. The Autumn Lane fire is now close to 5,900 acres, which means it has grown to be nearly twice the size it was just a couple days ago. All three fires remain at 0% containment. I want to explain what 0% containment actually means because a lot of people get this wrong every single time it comes up. 0% does not mean nothing is being done. It does not mean crews have given up or that the fire is somehow winning completely unopposed. It means the fire crews have not finished building a control line around the fire that they trust will hold if conditions change. Think of it like digging a trench around the whole fire. Until that trench, or line, goes all the way around and holds under pressure, Containment stays at zero, no matter how many crews, engines, or aircraft are working the fire. A fire can literally stop moving and sit at 0% for days, simply because crews haven't finished securing the perimeter yet. So don't assume a fire sitting at 0% means it's completely out of control right this second. It might just mean the work of locking it down isn't finished, and that work on a fire this size can take weeks. Because of all this, evacuation orders and warnings are still active around the Spokane area, and officials are asking people not to return home even if things look calmer, because conditions can flip fast. The number of structures lost from the first weekend of this fire, when it exploded overnight and caught entire blocks off guard, was around 600 homes and buildings, along with businesses and other property. That number has not been fully updated yet, and when it is, it's going to go up, not down. Damage assessment teams are going block by block, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, and they are not finished. Some of the footage coming out of these neighborhoods, streets where half the houses are gone and half are somehow untouched, is honestly heartbreaking to look at. Now, back to the fire I think deserves way more attention than it's getting. The Sinlahekan fire. I've actually spent time in that part of Washington before, and it's hard to put into words how much is being lost there right now, quietly, while most of the country's attention stays locked on Spokane. This fire started on July the 26th, caused by lightning in the Loomis State Forest, north of Tonasket, close to the Canadian border. On July 31st, it was sitting at about 3,200 acres. Less than a week later, it had climbed past 100,000 acres. That's an explosion of growth in just a matter of days, the kind of jump that usually only happens when wind, dry fuel, and bad timing all line up at once. The fire has pushed toward Palmer Mountain, Rattlesnake Peak, South Pine Creek, and areas west of the Okanogan River, and it's continued burning over places like Tillman Mountain and Quartz Hill on its northern edge. Because of that, Level 3 evacuation orders now cover Tonasket, Ellisford, the North and South Pine Creek areas, the Loomis area, and Palmer Mountain, basically everything west of the Okanogan River, stretching toward Anna Mountain, along with newer additions like the Crumbaker Road area. Power has been knocked out from Tonasket all the way up to the Canadian border, which means people aren't just evacuating. Some of them are sitting in the dark, waiting to find out if they even have a home to go back to. Containment is still sitting in the single digits after more than a week of burning, even with close to 1,100 personnel now assigned to the incident. A shelter has been set up at the Community Cultural Center in Tonasket for anyone displaced, and officials have been holding community meetings just to keep residents updated on what's actually happening, because the situation keeps shifting day to day. Here's why I think this fire isn't getting the coverage it deserves, and I want to walk through the math with you, because it actually explains a lot about how disaster coverage works in general. Okanogan County only has around 40,000 to 42,000 people spread across an area that's actually bigger than the entire state of Connecticut. Spread that few people across that much land, and you simply don't get the same density of cameras, reporters, or dramatic street-level footage. Spokane, on the other hand, has around 230,000 people packed into one place, the second largest city in the entire state. So even though the Sinlahekan fire is many times larger in acreage than all three Spokane area fires combined, it's burning in a place with far fewer people around to film it, post about it, or call it in. And unfortunately, the amount of news coverage almost always follows the amount of dramatic footage available, not the actual size or severity of the disaster itself. A burning house on a city block makes for a striking video. 100,000 acres of remote forest and grassland burning quietly in a low-population county does not, even though it might represent a far bigger loss in total. The people evacuating in Tonasket, Ellisford, and the surrounding areas are going through exactly the same fear, the same uncertainty, and the same loss as the people evacuating in Spokane. Their homes matter just as much. It's just not being filmed the same way, and it's not reaching the same number of screens. And this isn't just a Washington problem either. It happens every single fire season in every state. A fire tearing through a small town gets wall-to-wall coverage because there are enough people there to record it, post it, and share it within minutes. A fire tearing through a rural county with almost nobody living in the burn zone barely gets a mention, even when it's larger, even when it's threatening just as many homes relative to the population, even when the personal loss for the families involved is exactly the same. It's not that anyone is deliberately ignoring places like Tonasket. It's just that coverage naturally follows where the cameras already are, and there simply aren't as many cameras out in Okanogan County right now. But now, here's the development I mentioned at the very top, and it's honestly frightening once you understand what it means. Lake Chelan. I was there myself not long ago, and it's one of the most gorgeous places in the entire state. Deep blue water, steep mountain walls, the kind of place that ends up on postcards. The Little Giant Fire is now burning on nearly the same ground that burned there before, which already tells you how dry and primed this landscape has become. It started from a lightning strike back on July 15th, I actually watched an earlier fire start in that same general area with my own eyes, and I stayed nearby for about a week, watching how it moved and behaved before deciding conditions were getting too dangerous and I was burning in remote, rugged country north of Lake Wenatchee, near the Entiat River, the Chihuahua River, and along the edge of the Glacier Peak Wilderness, some of the most difficult terrain in the state for crews to even physically access. Just a few days ago, it was sitting around 31,500 acres. Now it has climbed to nearly 59,300 acres, still at 0% contained. That's almost double in a matter of days. But here's the part that really matters, and it's not just about how many acres have burned. Strong winds pushed the fire all the way to the edge of Lake Chelan itself, and then something happened that should scare anyone living near that lake. The fire actually threw burning embers all the way across the open water. Fire behavior experts estimated the spot fires created by those embers covered more than 30 acres combined on the far side of the lake, meaning the fire essentially jumped and restarted itself on the opposite shore. Lake Chelan is over a mile wide in some spots. People naturally assume a lake acts like a wall that stops fire completely, and that assumption is true for a wall of flame. A fire cannot walk across water. But it is not true for embers. Wind can pick up a burning ember, carry it across open water, and drop it onto dry brush on the opposite shore, starting a brand new fire long before any actual flame front gets anywhere close to that side. This exact same pattern is happening right now near Vernon, up in Canada, where fire crews are watching flames reach lake shores and throw embers across in the same dangerous way. It's becoming a recognizable pattern this season, not just a one-time fluke. Because of this, new evacuation orders went out along the lake almost immediately. Level 3 orders are in place on the south lakeshore side from Pyramid Creek to 25 Mile Creek, meaning leave now. Level 2 orders cover the area from Fields Point to 25 Mile Creek State Park, including Shady Pass, Robinson Lane, and the park itself, meaning be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Level 1 orders stretch from Fields Point to State Route 9 Saskatchewan, meaning stay alert and watch for updates. That includes every campground in those zones, which matters a lot right now because this is the first week of August, one of the busiest weeks of the entire year on one of the busiest lakes in the whole state. This is a place families plan vacations around for months, sometimes booking cabins a year in advance, and now some of those same families are being told to pack up and leave early. Notices are now posted on both the South Shore and the Manson side of the lake, and the number of structures considered at risk in the Manson area keeps growing as the fire continues to press closer. Let's move through the rest of Washington quickly, because there are several large fires burning right now that barely get mentioned anywhere, even locally. The Maudrite Fire in Ferry and Stevens counties near Inchelium, west of Lake Roosevelt, has burned around 51,100 acres and is about 17% contained, which is actually decent progress compared to some of these other fires still stuck at zero. The Ptarmigan Fire, burning in the Pasayten Wilderness north of the Metho Valley near the Pasayten Airstrip and the Middle Fork Pasayten River, has burned close to 16,000 acres and remains at 0% contained. There's also a fire near Colville, in the Braden Hill area, that has burned several thousand acres with only light containment progress so far, and crews there are still working to build a solid line around it. Air quality alerts are active right now across Asotin, Chelan, Douglas, Ferry, Okanogan, and Stevens counties, and they will stay in effect until conditions actually improve, not just until the fires stop growing. If you live in one of those counties and the sky looks hazy or orange, that's not just weather. That's smoke sitting low in the air, and it's worth limiting time outdoors, especially for kids, older adults, and anyone with breathing conditions. Statewide, the wildfire emergency declaration and burn ban ordered by the governor remains fully in effect, and it isn't expected to be lifted anytime soon. These fires, taken together, are on pace to be some of the worst this state has ever recorded in a single season. Now let's head south into Oregon, because honestly, Oregon is having a worse fire season than Washington right now. And it is getting even less national attention, even with numbers this large. As of this morning, there are more than 60 large wildfires burning across the state, and the total burned area is approaching 2 million acres. To give you some sense of scale, that's roughly a quarter the size of Vancouver Island, all burned in a single state, in a single fire season. And we're still only in the first week of August. Oregon actually set its all-time record for acres burned in a single season back in 2024. This year has now officially surpassed that old record, and there are still weeks of dangerous fire weather ahead before the season typically starts to wind down. This is not close to being over, not by a long way. Where is all of this actually burning? The Roe Creek Complex, southwest of Fossil in Wheeler County, close to the John Day Fossil Beds National Monument, is now the largest single incident in the state, having burned somewhere between 320,000 and 344,000 acres depending on the latest count, and it's roughly 55 to 60% contained after crews merged 4 separate fires into one combined complex. The Hay Creek complex in Gilliam County has burned around 200,000 acres and is nearly finished, sitting at about 98% containment, which actually shows that with enough time, weather cooperation, and resources, crews can eventually get ahead of even a massive fire like this one. An incident management team recently took over command of that fire, and a rare and serious red flag warning was issued for the area, with peak dangerous conditions expected between early afternoon and evening, driven by strong, sustained winds and very dry fuel. The Bench Fire, southwest of Warm Springs, has burned close to 67,000 acres and is somewhere between 52 and 66% contained, but it continues to threaten the Warm Springs Reservation directly, putting tribal land and homes at risk. The Akawa Butte Fire, in the Ochoco and Jefferson County areas, has burned around 27,000 to 28,000 acres and sits at roughly 85% contained. The Henry Fire has burned close to 30,000 acres and is somewhere between 75 and 83% contained, moving in the right direction. There's also a newer fire called the Shingle Fire that has already burned over 70,000 acres and is only around 1/3 contained, and a fire called the Coyote Fire that has burned about 17,000 acres and is close to 90% contained. Further south, near the Idaho border, the Big Grass Fire has burned past 340,000 acres, with level 3 evacuation orders active in places like Pleasant Valley, South Mountain, and Jordan Valley, and containment there is sitting at only around 25%. Residents in that area have been told to evacuate using specific roads because other routes have been closed off by the fire itself. It's worth pointing out just how wide the range of containment is across these Oregon fires. Some, like Hay Creek, are almost fully locked down at 98%. Others, like the Big Grass Fire, are still sitting at only a quarter contained after burning for weeks. That gap tells you something important. Containment isn't just about effort, it's about terrain, access, weather, and how much fuel is available for the fire to keep feeding on. A fire burning through flat, open-range land with road access on every side can get contained relatively quickly once crews get ahead of it. A fire burning through steep, roadless wilderness like parts of the Roe Creek complex or the fires up near Glacier Peak in Washington can sit stubbornly low on containment for weeks, simply because there's no safe way to get heavy equipment or large crews into the terrain. Almost all of these Oregon fires were sparked by the same series of lightning storms that rolled through back in the middle of July, roughly between the 15th and 18th of that month. That single stretch of storms, weeks ago now, is still the reason all of this is burning across the state right now. One weather event, several weeks in the past, and Oregon is still fighting the consequences of it every single day. So what actually matters for the next 48 hours? Wind. That's really the whole story right now, more than any single acreage number I've given you. Fire activity across the region has calmed down somewhat compared to the extreme conditions of the past weekend, but gusty winds remain the biggest concern everywhere, from Spokane down to the Idaho border. Every single fire covered in this update is burning in an area where wind decides what happens next, whether a fire stays quiet overnight or explodes across a ridge by morning. Temperatures are expected to ease back toward more normal levels over the coming days in some areas, but warm, dry conditions combined with 10 to 15 mile per hour winds are still enough to keep fire activity alive and pushing forward. If you're under a level 3 order, you need to already be packed and ready to go. Not thinking about packing, actually in the car, or ready to be in the car within minutes. If you're under a level 2 order, keep your bags by the door, keep your important documents together, and stay ready to move the moment conditions shift. These fires can jump from calm to dangerous in a matter of hours when the wind picks up. And that's exactly what has happened again and again this season, in Spokane, in Tonasket, and along the shores of Lake Chelan. I'll keep watching these numbers closely and give you an update the moment anything changes in a meaningful way. I'll also keep tracking containment percentages across all of these fires day by day, because that number, more than the acreage total, tells you whether crews are actually gaining ground or just holding on. This is a fast-moving situation, and honestly, some of what's happening in Okanogan County and around Lake Chelan deserves a lot more attention than it's currently getting from the news, from the country, from anyone outside of the people actually living through it. If you know someone in Washington or Oregon, especially anyone near Tonasket, Chelan, Spokane, or Central and Eastern Oregon, send them this so they know what's actually happening around them right now. Thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.